Hello, guys. Can everybody hear me? Okay, I can see some people nodding. Nice one. Nice to see you all. Monse and Alex, what have you done with this background? It's incredible. I suppose that's some kind of special effect. It looks amazing. Yeah, I didn't know you could do that. That's cool. All righty, wonderful. I can see you there, Danny. Hello, Giuseppe. Hello, David. Wonderful. We've got a few of you in today. Hey, Danny. All righty. Who else have we got? Zaira. Hello. And Maria Carme. Is it Maria Carme? Fantastic. Hello, hello. We've got Andrea as well. Anastasia, Eric. Fantastic. And Javi as well. Wonderful. And hopefully a few more of you will be joining us later. I hope so. We'll see. All right, guys. So as you know, the topic of today's webinar is going to be the verb get. Get. So just three little letters, G-E-T, but a lot of different meanings for this verb. In fact, the idea for this webinar was kind of inspired by a student. I won't use the student's real name. I'll call him Jordi for now. But it was at the end of one of my classes. And always at the end of the class, I always ask the students, does anyone have any questions? And Jordi decided to, at the end of the class, to say, Patrick, what does get mean? And that wasn't really the type of question that I had in mind. Obviously, at the end of the class, I'm kind of looking for some short questions, or questions I can give short answers to. And most definitely, the answer is quite long to the question of what does get mean? So today, my idea is to kind of take a look at some of the uses of get. I'm not going to be able to cover all the different uses of get. I'm going to try to kind of cover the most typical ones, the ones that people struggle with the most, and hopefully give you something to kind of take away that's useful and that you can remember when you're speaking English in the future. Cool. Well, let's begin. I had a few technological issues last time, but I hope I've sorted those out this time. Let's see. So I'm going to share this keynote here, and then we're going to play. Okay, fantastic. So I think we're looking good. Can everyone see that? A Sim Diagonal webinar, many uses of get. Happy days. All righty. Very good. Thank you, guys. Thank you. I can see you there in the chat. Absolutely perfect. Thank you, guys. So please, I can see the chat. I won't be able to reply, but I can see the chat. So please keep commenting as we go along. If you have any doubts, you have any questions, if something's unclear, please let me know, and hopefully I'll be able to explain that. So I have the chat open. Feel free to communicate throughout the presentation. All right. So let's get going. First slide. So we're going to start really just with the basics. Yeah. So as we know, or as I hope we know, every verb in the English language has three forms. Okay. Now I said every verb in the English language. There are actually, well, there is one group of verbs that doesn't follow this form, that doesn't have these three forms. If anyone can think of what that group is, please tell me in the chat. It's one specific type of verb. We're going to take an example with the verb to take. Alrighty, so take is the present form, took is the form in the past simple, and taken is the past participle. So as I said, every verb, with the exception of one group, has these three forms: take, took, taken. So what about for the verb to get? Obviously, the present form is get, no surprises there. The past simple form, Eric, on fire, modal verbs. You're absolutely correct. Yeah, because this system doesn't work with modal verbs, does it? If we, must, musted, nah, musted doesn't exist. That's impossible. Yeah. Canned. I mean, you sort of have could in the past simple, but certainly no past participle. Yeah. So really good, Eric. That's exactly right. So back to our example. Get is the present form. What's the past simple form? Could someone tell me in the chat? How do you say get in the past? Javi, correct. Got. Wonderful. Got. There we are. And what about the past participle form? Anybody? Okay, Andrea says gotten. Aha. And Javi says got. Interesting. Interesting. So we got, well, let's have a look. we've got two options. So you're both correct. Andrea, you're correct. And Javi, you're also correct. We've got and gotten. Wonderful. So what's the difference? Why do we have two verbs here? Well, got is British English and gotten is rubbish English. No, I'm joking. Gotten is American English. It's not rubbish English. Don't worry, Andrea, you're absolutely correct. I just personally prefer British English, but there we have it. So British English, got, American English, gotten. Yeah, get, got, gotten. Okay, so that's the basics. That's how we use the verb in the present, the past simple, and also the past participle. And that's going to be important later in the presentation, because we're going to look at some different uses of get that actually involve past participles. For the rest of the presentation today, I'm going to go with British English because it's weird for me to say things in American English. But just so you know, gotten is also an option. All right, great. So let's have a look. Get. The verb get. So it looks like I can see 5 arrows. So it looks like we're going to have 5 meanings of get. So let's go one by one. Arrive. So there's nothing really to explain here. This is just a synonym. Get is a synonym of arrive. So I could say, I arrived at school at 7 o'clock, or I could say I got to school at 7 o'clock. So arrived or got, they're just the same. Maybe you noticed a little difference in terms of prepositions, because I said I arrived at school and I said I got to school. That's actually a really common mistake. I think it comes from llegar a in Spanish, and people always say arrive to, but actually no, it's, well, the preposition can vary, but it's never to, it's very often at. So you arrive at a place, but you get to a place. So that's absolutely correct. So the meaning's the same, but the prepositions just differ slightly. Obviously, there are a couple of examples where you don't use a preposition at all. For example, to get home or to get here, I could say I got home, meaning I arrived home. I got home at 12 o'clock. In this case, we don't use to. It's really weird, but home and also here and there are what we call adverbs or adverbials. It's kind of mind-blowing when you realize that, that home is an adverb. Obviously, it can be a noun sometimes. I have a home in Mexico, fine, no problem. It's a noun, but it's very often an adverb. Yeah, so I get home, home is an adverb, or I get here. And for that reason, we don't use to in those cases. Yeah, so you get home or you arrive home, no problem. All right, so that's one meaning of get, arrive. Simple as that. We play with the preposition, but basically it's synonymous with get, or get is synonymous with arrive. Second one. Now, this one is going to require a little more explanation. So actually, we're going to deal with this one later in the presentation. Just to give you an idea, obviously, we usually form the passive voice with be. For example, in football, when a player receives a red card, the verb is to send off. So I could say, to stick with my examples with Sergio Ramos is sent with a T, is sent off a lot. Or Sergio Ramos gets sent off a lot by the referee. Yeah, so we can form the passive with be and also with get, but we're going to look at that in much more detail later in the presentation. So I'll leave that there for now. Okay, our third meaning of get is understand. And kind of similar to arrive, this one's simply a synonym. We don't have to think about it any harder than that, yeah? I don't understand it, I don't get it. Both of those are exactly the same, yeah? I don't get it, I don't understand it, no problem, yeah? Simple synonym. Okay, so three meanings so far. Next one, become. Now, again, I put here reflexive. I could have put intransitive. It will become clear later in the presentation why I went with reflexive. I always find become a really difficult word to translate, kind of, you know, often when I'm speaking Spanish, I'm kind of thinking in English and I'm trying to think, how do I express this idea in Spanish? And it's a difficult one, and it really depends on the phrase, how you translate it. Today we're going to look at kind of reflexive ideas like I get tired and things like this. But as I said, I'm going to explain that in much more detail. But when I say I get tired, it means I wasn't tired and then I start to be tired. So in that sense, we can understand that I get tired or I become tired. The sky gets dark, it's light, and then it becomes dark. The sky gets dark. So in that sense, we can think about get as become, which brings us to 4 meanings. It's going to be a long hour, guys. Let's go for the next one. The 5th one. Now, this one is kind of a general meaning of get, in the sense that obtain is quite a general meaning, you know, like obtener in Spanish, to get something or to obtain something. Obtain sounds really formal and get is much more colloquial. But what do I mean when I say obtain? Well, this is going to sort of increase the number of translations here. Buy kind of is a verb that has the idea of obtain, doesn't it? You go to the supermarket and you obtain things. So it's really common that get just means buy. You know, I could say, that's a really cool bicycle. Where did you get it? And what I'm trying to say is, where did you buy it? Yeah? Or where did you obtain it? So again, obtain is kind of the general meaning. Another one, find. You know, do you know anywhere I can get music for free? Do you know anywhere I can find music for free? Yeah. So this idea of get meaning obtain or find something, again, is kind of related meanings. Cool. The last one. Alrighty, I can't actually see this one. It's obscured by Danny. You're just exactly where the bubble is. But buy, find, and what was it? Receive, I think it was. Am I right? Thank you very much, Danny. Just your face is exactly where the slide is. So yeah, to receive is perfect. So yeah, again, when I say I got a letter last week, it simply means I received a letter last week. Did you get the email I sent you? Did you obtain the email I sent you? So we can kind of think of these 3 words, and even I could even add more, you know, download, like descargar, download. In fact, if you use the App Store, the Apple App Store, if you use that in English, it actually, the ones that you don't have to pay for, it just says get, and you just click the button and you obtain or you get that app. So yeah, download could also be another one with this idea of obtain. So that's kind of a really general meaning of the verb to get. Alrighty, so I don't know, we're maybe 10 minutes into the presentation, and it looks like we've already got how many? 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 different uses of get. As I said before, the ones that are kind of easier to understand and easier to use are these ones that are just synonyms, you know, buy, find, receive, understand, arrive. It's just a question of getting those things in context. And of course, context is always king, always. You know, if I say to you without any context, did you get it? I mean, what does that mean? Did you understand it? Did you receive it? Did you buy it? Did you find it? It could mean almost anything. But in context, if I see someone wearing a new shirt and I say, oh, that's really nice, where did you get it? You're immediately going to understand that I mean something like obtain or buy or something like that. So context is obviously super important in languages generally, but especially with this verb get. It's also a great one I tell all my students in exams. You know, you have those horrible exam exercises where you have to put a word in the gap. It's always my advice. If you don't know, put get, and you never know. It might just be right. It has that many meanings that maybe it's right. Yeah. Okay. Great. So, I mean, if anyone wants to take a screenshot of that, go for it. You can also email me later, and I'll be more than happy to send you a PDF of all the graphics that we've used in the presentation today. Great. So let's continue. Where are we? So, as I said, I want to focus in a bit more detail on this idea of become. Yeah, become. So the sky gets dark, I get tired, etc. Because it's a really typical one, and it's not kind of immediately obvious how to use it and what exactly, you know, what's the difference between I am tired and I get tired. You know, it's often a little bit confusing for students to kind of get to understand that difference. So I've put a lot of examples there in Spanish, actually. Vestirse, casarse, etc., etc., etc. And you'll notice that all those verbs end with se, because they're all what you guys call in Spanish reflexive verbs. I never particularly liked the name reflexive verbs because you guys don't always use them reflexively, but they're always called reflexive verbs. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Basically, reflexive verbs, these ones that in the infinitive end with se. And as I said, I put a few examples there. So you guys who speak Spanish, and it's more or less the same idea in Catalan as well, you have these really useful reflexive verbs, which allow you to express all kinds of things. They usually express an idea of change. As I said, with the sky gets dark, this idea of changing from light to dark, they express this idea of change. In the English language, we basically don't have these reflexive verbs. They just don't exist in the same form that they existed in Spanish. But obviously, we still need to express the same ideas. So how do we do it? Would be the question. So first of all, let's explain a little bit more about what I mean by reflexive. So I put an example there on the whiteboard. Okay, so I'll take a moment to look at that. So I've got a question for you guys, and you can tell me the answer in the chat. You can see that the verb enfriar is used in both the first and the second phrase, but in which phrase is it being used reflexively? Do you think it's being used reflexively in the first one or the second one? You can write in the chat, first or second. Okay, good. First. I agree with you guys. Fantastic. So no more Spanish grammar, I promise. Good. So absolutely. It's kind of, well, hopefully it's quite obvious. It looks as though it has been. In the first phrase, the subject and the object are kind of the same thing. It's doing it to itself. The dinner is getting cold. Obviously in the second phrase, we can see that it's going from one subject to a different object. The ice is the subject, and then the verb enfría, and then the object la bebida. So the ice and the drink would be two different things, yeah? The subject and the object. Great, fantastic. So a verb can be said to be reflexive. As I said, I don't like the definition, or it can at least be said to be used reflexively when the subject does it to itself, or himself, or herself, or themselves. Yeah? Just like Javi's dinner, basically. Great. Okay. So now we've kind of defined what these phrases are in Spanish. Let's take a look at how we say them in English. And this is the typical way that we express this same idea in English. We use get, and we follow it with an adjective or a past participle. Sometimes it's not immediately obvious what's an adjective and what's a past participle. I mean that in the sense of if I say something like, I'm tired, you know, you think, well, there's a verb tire, and maybe tired is the past participle. I am tired by running a marathon. Or maybe you think, no, it's an adjective. Estoy cansado, I'm tired. It's an interesting question, and it's a question you can debate. But in reality, it doesn't matter, certainly not for this, because we treat both of them in exactly the same way. So it really doesn't matter if you consider, you know, bored, tired, etc., etc. If you consider them past participles, past participle adjectives, it really doesn't matter for the purposes of this construction. So get and then an adjective. So a couple of translations from the previous slide. I've actually used get twice in the first one. Get a move on. I don't know if anyone's heard that phrase before. Obviously, you saw the translation before, sort of date prisa. You could also say hurry up. Hurry up's quite a typical one as well. You could say get a move on, Javi, or hurry up. And now the important part. This is the substitute for the reflexive verb. Your dinner is getting cold. So get adjective. Yeah? Get adjective. I put this one in the present continuous. Is getting cold. You could use it in any verbal tense. Will be getting cold, was getting cold, has got cold, whatever you prefer, yeah? And you'll notice that in the second translation, get is not there. Yep, because it's not reflexive. In Spanish, it's not reflexive, yeah? It's transitive. The ice cools the drink, yeah? Get cold is intransitive, so there's no object. Your dinner is getting cold. All right, great. I hope that's clear so far. So let's have a look. Just to make this really logical, we can follow the process. So numbers 1 to 6, these are reflexive verbs in Spanish. I don't need to read them, you can see them there. So if we want to think about how to express something like with number 1, me visto, number 2, me caso, number 3, me canso, etc., etc. If we want to think about how to express this, we need to follow the process. So first of all, we have the reflexive verb in Spanish. Now we need to think, okay, what is the related past participle or the related adjective? So from vestirse, we could make vestida, for example, yeah? Estás muy bien vestida, yeah? You're very well dressed, something like. Okay, so we've got here in the second column, all the adjectives or past participles that we would make from these reflexive verbs. Now in the third column, of course, we're going to have to translate them into English. Let's see, guys. You tell me. Translations, please. You can put the number and then your translation. Hopefully, these aren't too difficult. Let's see. Any ideas, guys? Nothing yet. Oh, Monica, I think I can hear you. Maybe you could mute yourself. I think you might have unmuted yourself. Don't worry, it happened to Danny last time. I think it's you I can hear. All righty. Okay, well, actually, good, Danny. Almost. And Monica, get dressed. Perfect, yeah. Good. So actually, in this one, I'm not looking for the whole phrase, just the adjective or the past participle. So you're absolutely right. Number 1 would be dressed. So that was correct, Monica, D-R-E-S-S-E-D, dressed. The second one would be tired. No, sorry, married would be the second one. The third one would be tired. The fourth one, cold. The fifth, what do you think? Number 5. It could be boring or bored. We're going to go with good. Yeah, we're going to go with bored for today, Danny. Perfect. Yeah, good. And the last one, how do you say borracha or borracho? Drunk. Very good. Fantastic. Yeah, almost either, but with a U. Drunk. Yeah, it goes drink, drank, drunk. So we got to use that that past participle. Drunk. Okay. Fantastic. And there we have it. Great. Okay, wonderful. Good, guys. So there's our 3 columns, yeah? So again, we follow the process. What's the reflexive verb? What's the related adjective? How do we say it in English? And the final step, of course, is going to be add the verb get. And then we'll be able to say something like me visto and say I get dressed, as you said, to get married, etc., etc. So I've put basically now, hopefully, I'll click here. Wonderful. And we've got a bunch of examples in Spanish. Now, I don't want to deal with those now, but what I would like you guys to do is to take a screenshot, or if you're not sure how to do that, you can take a picture with your phone or something like that. And at the end of the presentation today, I'm going to ask you for some translations, yeah? Okay. So choose a number at random. I don't want all of you to do number 1. So choose a number at random. Of course, someone can do number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as you prefer. And at the end, we're going to take a look at some translations. So while I'm explaining some more, you guys can start translating a little bit. All right, great. So hopefully that's clear. That's using get with adjectives and past participles for this idea of reflexive verbs, yeah? If I walk in the rain without an umbrella, I get wet. Get mojado. I get wet. Yeah? Something like, if I drink too much whiskey, what happens? I get drunk. Yeah? If I work all day, I get tired. Yesterday, I got so tired working all day. Yeah? So we can play with the verbal tenses. We can express it any way we want. But this idea of reflexive verbs, using get with adjectives and past participles. Great. Next one. Okay, great. Oh, one thing. By the way, Monica, last time I remember you sent me some time updates because I lost my clock. Well, the same things happened today. So if you could send me regular updates, that would be fantastic. Good. So let's move on to the next one. So if you remember on I think it was the second slide, the first or the second slide, we looked at get in the passive voice. And this idea that although we normally form the passive voice with the verb to be, it is possible to form the passive with get. And this is another example where we're going to need some past participles. Okay. So here's the sort of rhetorical question, but isn't the passive voice formed with the verb to be? Yes, it is. Yeah. So don't panic. What you know is correct. We do form the passive voice with the verb to be. That's absolutely correct. Today, I'm simply offering you an alternative that works in some cases. So yes and no. Yeah. Yes and no. We do form it with the verb to be, except when we don't. So there we go. Here's a couple of examples. These are classic examples straight from your English language textbooks. Well, the first one at least. Hamlet was written by Shakespeare. Okay, so we can see that this is passive. We know that it's passive because we see the verb to be. In this case, it's conjugated as was because it's in the past. And then we see a past participle, write, wrote, written. So we can be 100% sure that this is in the passive. If we need any further evidence, we see by Shakespeare. So when we have by and then the doer of the action, we can be even surer that this is passive. Yeah. Okay. The second one, if you keep getting drunk. So this first part is not passive, yeah? That's an example of what we just studied now. This is an example of emborracharse. If you keep getting drunk and shouting like that, maybe this is something that someone does every weekend. If you keep getting drunk and shouting like that, you'll be arrested. So again, we're in the passive, aren't we? You will be, so there's your verb to be. Arrested is a past participle. It's a regular verb. Arrest, arrested, arrested. In this case, I didn't include by the police because it's just not necessary. It doesn't add any extra information to the phrase. It's actually a really common error in the passive voice. I think it's one of those errors that's kind of the teacher's fault because we force you students, to make these active sentences passive, you know. I punch the table is punched by me, when in fact, we would never say that. Just always check yourself when you're using the passive, you know. Every time you use the passive followed with by, just think, am I adding any extra information or not? And if the answer is not, then just don't say it. You know, who can arrest people? The police. That's it. So by saying by the police, I'm not adding any extra information. Yeah, I was arrested. I don't need to say by the police. If I say my phone was stolen by someone, well, of course it was stolen by someone. I'm not adding any extra information. My phone was stolen. Full stop. Okay, so there's two examples of the passive voice, yeah, with be plus past participle. The first one's past. The second one's future, no problem. in every case, it's be with a past participle. Okay, so in the first phrase, Hamlet was written by Shakespeare. In the first phrase, it's actually not possible. It's not possible to substitute the verb to be with the verb get. It's not possible. In the second example, it's absolutely possible. No problem. So why is it possible in the second phrase and not the first? Because we tend to use, we tend to use the get passive, the passive with get, when things happen to someone, to us or to someone, and that person or that thing doesn't kind of have any control over the situation. You know, when someone or something is the passive receiver of an action, and it's usually something bad. It's usually when bad things happen to us. These are the cases in which we tend to use get. And just to be super clear, you can always use be. It's never a mistake to use be. So if you're not sure, you're having doubts, no problem. Just use be, you're absolutely fine. But often, especially native speakers, because it's a bit less formal, it's a bit more colloquial. In these cases where things happen to us, and they're bad and we don't have control over the situation, we often use get, okay? Which is why the second sentence can be expressed using get. You'll get arrested. You know? Getting arrested is a bad thing and it happens to you. You don't have any control over it, yeah? The policemen come and whatever they do to you and they handcuff you, yeah? You're not in control of that situation, yeah? So you can get arrested because it's bad and it happens to you and you don't have any control over the situation, yeah? So those are the cases, guys. Those are the cases in which we tend to use the get passive. All righty. So look at this. You can get punched, yeah? To punch, if you know that one, it's a verb. You can get kicked, sort of like punched, but with the foot. You can get arrested, yeah, by the police. You can get hit. Now, maybe you're thinking, is that a past participle? But it is, it's hit, hit, hit. It's one of those verbs that doesn't change in the past, yeah? So you can get hit, you can get fired. Yeah, so that's when your boss tells you in no uncertain terms to leave the company because you did something wrong. You can get fired. Yeah, or if you're a bad student, you can get sent out of the classroom. Yeah, it's only happened to me once when I was a kid at school. I was a good kid generally, but I still remember it perfectly. I guess this is going on YouTube. So if you're listening, Mr. Danson, he was my maths teacher. It wasn't me. It wasn't my fault. But anyway, I got sent out of the classroom. So there you go. And of course, as I said, I could also express all those examples using be. It's always fine to use be. So I was punched or I got punched. I will be kicked or I will get kicked. Okay, really doesn't matter. Yeah, you can use the passive with be or the passive with get. As a native speaker, it kind of usually just pops out with get for me. If I'm not kind of thinking about what I'm saying, it's really natural to come out with, as get. All right, now this is English. So of course we have an exception for you guys. You'll notice I was very careful with my wording, that we tend to use the get passive when bad things happen to us, because at the end of every month, fingers crossed, you get paid. So your company pays you. So at the end of every month, I am paid or I get paid. Now, of course, that's not a bad thing. In fact, it's a wonderful thing to get paid at the end of the month. Yeah. So as I said, this is English. There are always exceptions. And my company pays me would be active. I get paid by my company. Again, by my company is often not necessary, but just to give you the example, I get paid by my company at the end of the month would be absolutely fine as well. Okay, so just something to keep in mind, yeah? All righty. Fantastic. So guys, that more or less brings us to the end of the information that I wanted to give to you guys today. Just to kind of recap, so I hope you're all working. I hope you're all working on your translations as we speak. Remember, I need those from you guys. Translations, we can look at those, we can analyze them a little bit. But yeah, just to kind of recap what we said at the beginning of the presentation, these various uses of get, the easier ones are going to be your synonyms, the direct synonyms where you think, okay, get means arrive, get means receive, yeah, get means buy, no problem, yeah. These are kind of the easier ones. We have to check our prepositions, maybe they're different depending on the verbs, but they're kind of the easier ones to deal with. The much more difficult ones, the ones that students struggle with, are generally these reflexive ideas: to get wet, to get drunk, to get tired, etc., etc. And also in the passive voice, it can be really confusing. You think, what's this get doing here? But it's auxiliary. It's the auxiliary verb in the passive voice. Yeah? Okay, great. So, well, if anyone has any questions, that would be great. I'm just gonna. Aha, fantastic. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, good. I got married 5 years ago. Wonderful. 1 second. That looks absolutely perfect to me, Danny. Yep, I got married. Let me just remind myself of the question. So what was it in Spanish? Me casé hace 3 años. Fantastic, Danny. Yeah, I got married 5 years ago. So it's reflexive. We've got get and the past participle. Get's in the past, because it was 5 years ago, was it? Oh yeah, well, 5 years, 3 years, whatever. Absolutely fine, yeah. Grammatically perfect. Very good. So that was number 3. Anybody else? Do you have any more for me? Let's have a look. Number 4, I got divorced 6 months later. Very good. That's absolutely perfect. David, I got divorced 6 months later. Wonderful. All righty. Everyone's avoiding numbers 1 and 2 now? They're too long. Well, let's see if anyone can do number 1 or number 2, or indeed 5. If not, I'm going to have to do them myself. Let's have a look. Let's copy that. Go on. Is anyone feeling brave? I'll give you can you rewrite them, please? Yeah, okay, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it? 1 second. Let's have a look if I can do that here. Copy. I'm going to share my whiteboard with you guys, and let's try it like this. Paste. Okay. Hopefully, can you all see that? Okay, there we go. Any ideas? You'll notice that all of these are related to that meaning of that kind of reflexive or that intransitive meaning, yeah? The one that we studied at the beginning. Aha, very good, very good. Let's have a look. Giuseppe, what have we got? I got drunk and I lost my mind. Fantastic. So which one was that? Number 5. Very good. So I got drunk and I lost my mind. It's very creative, Giuseppe. And I agree absolutely with the first part. I got drunk. The second part is not exactly a translation of what I wrote, but it's absolutely correct. I lost my mind. That would just be lose as in perder, yeah. But actually, yeah, good, Anastasia. I got drunk and I got lost in the city centre, yeah. That's absolutely perfect, Anastasia. I got drunk and I got lost in the city centre. Wonderful. All righty. Are we missing any? My pleasure, my pleasure. There was one more now, number 1. I think everyone avoided. Oh, numbers 1 and 2. Now, if you're thinking about number 2, great, yeah, nice one. Javi, let's have a look. Banks get richer while people get poorer. That's amazing, man. Really good, really good. And number 1, Daniel, let's go. It was raining when I come home at house and I got very wet. Or Zaira said, it was raining when I was arriving at home and I got very wet. Yeah, good, good, good. I haven't got bored, confined at home. Very good, Eric. I'm happy to hear it. You've been keeping yourself entertained. Wonderful. Yeah, listen, what was Daniel's? It was raining when I came at house. I would say, Daniel, it was raining when I came. Remember, it's past simple. You could say when I came back home. Oh, I can hear somebody. Could you all just make sure you've got yourselves muted, please? I can hear somebody on the presentation. Just make sure. I don't know who it is, but hopefully you can mute yourselves. Good. So yeah, it was raining when I came back home, maybe to give the idea of like volver, when I came back home, and I got wet a lot. I'd say maybe like this. I got really wet. Maybe it sounds a bit more natural. I got really wet, yeah. And or as Zaira said, actually, I got very wet is fine, yeah. It was raining when I arrived. Yeah, good, Anastasia. Yeah, we just need arrived in the past. Arrived with a D at the end. It was raining when I arrived, and I got wet a lot. Could someone's got their microphone on? 1 second. I'm just going to stop sharing a second. See if I can find out who it is and mute. Aha, maybe that's it. Okay, I think I've got you all muted now, but please do try to keep yourselves muted if you can. Wonderful. So yes, well, let's have a look, guys. I also got some translations together for you guys here. Let's have a look. Copy these and see if I can paste them for you. So let's have a look at my translations and see how they compare with yours. Paste. Here we go. So there we go. So let's have a look. It was raining while I was going back home and I got really wet. Fantastic. So that's super similar to yours, I think, Zaida. Really good. Banks get richer while people get poorer. I think that's it, word for word, Javi, the same translation. And you did really well there, Javi, with the articles, because you didn't say the banks. And if anyone watched the first presentation, the people, good, you didn't say it because we're generalizing, yeah? In general, exactly, Javi. I'm glad you're paying attention. Happy days. Banks get richer while people get poorer. Number 3, my life ended 3 years ago. I'm only joking, guys. I got married 3 years ago. It's absolutely perfect. I got divorced 6 months later. It's perfect. And Anastasia, I think you were really close with this one. I got drunk and then got lost in the center. Okay, so you'll notice here, I didn't use I, and then I got lost. That's absolutely fine. You can include I or not, actually, in this phrase. Sometimes we're allowed to omit the subject when it's kind of really obvious in the context. So I got drunk and then got lost in the center, or then I got lost in the center. Absolutely perfect. Okie dokie, guys. Well, I wonder, does anyone have any questions? Any questions related to the use of get or anything like that? And I also wanted to ask you guys one more thing, which was for some suggestions, basically. Obviously, we want to do these seminars on an ongoing basis. And if anyone kind of had a topic that they thought, oh, I've never understood this particular part of grammar, or something to do with pronunciation, or maybe syntax, the order of words in a phrase, questions, something like that. So keep thinking. I'll put my email here in the chat, just in case anyone doesn't have it. And I'll put it there in the chat. And if you want to email me any suggestions that you could make about different topics that you'd like us to cover in these webinars, that would be really, really helpful. I mean, I'm happy to keep thinking up different things that I think would be useful. Oh, sorry, I sent it privately to Monica. Let me try again. This is me and technology, disaster. simdiagonal.com, and I need to send it to everyone. Here we go. There you go. Hopefully you've all got that. So that's my work email address, patrick@simdiagonal.com. And yeah,
No worries, Javi, my pleasure. So feel free to send me an email, make some suggestions for things you would like to see in the future. And secondly, if you want any of the materials, any of the graphics that I used in the presentation today, I'll be more than happy to send you those as a PDF. Okay. Well, it doesn't seem like we've got any questions, guys. So that's all. We'll finish it. Oh, hang on. We've got one here from Giuseppe. Subjects, collocation with long phrase with phrases chained. Phrases like this with a PH, yeah? Okay, so collocations actually could be a really interesting topic, Giuseppe. Yeah, perfect. Collocations could be a really interesting topic. It's one of those things that a lot of learners don't even know about, don't even know they exist. And then I explain it and, oh, wow, collocations, these are super important. So yeah, that's a really nice idea, Giuseppe. Cool, well, if any of you have any more ideas, please email them to me whenever you can. And we'll be more than happy to include those in future presentations. Okay, so thanks very much, everyone, for attending. And I hope to see you all next week. I still don't know exactly what it's going to be next week, but keep checking your emails and we will let you know. Okay, thanks to you guys. Cheers, Zaida. Thanks, Monica. Thanks, David, Eric, everybody. Take care of yourselves and cheers. And I'll see you all next week. Or Javier, I'll see you in about 10 minutes. Nice one, guys. Bye-bye. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Daddy. See you later. Monse, Alex. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm going now. Bye-bye.